hit the button. So we're live now. Good evening, folks. I should have told you before I hit the button, shouldn't I? Apologies for last night. I was feeling a wee bit under the weather, but we're back tonight. So tonight we have rejoining us this young lady over here.
Hello.
Debbie Ison. Debbie's been on, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, something like that. And down below, we're one of Debbie's friends, colleagues, Matthew Hopkins. No relation to the Witchfinder General, I will emphasise right away. So thanks for joining us, folks. Hope you are doing well. Debbie's drinking her hot water, by the way.
Hot water. Sorry, I was thinking, I know I probably should be speaking. Instead, I'm drinking some hot water and I'm in my own little world.
I would see, Debbie, see when you come on a podcast, you're meant to speak.
I forgot that bit tonight. It's been a long day.
Been a long day for you. How are you both?
Yeah, good, thank you. Enjoying it now. It's a bit sunny. It's been really rainy here the last couple of days, so it's been nice to go out this evening. I've gone for a walk in the meadow before coming on here.
Well, we had a heat wave up here for about 2 weeks. A heat wave in Scotland.
What was it, about 10 degrees?
It was what?
What was it, about 10 degrees?
No, you're just trying to be smart there, aren't you? that is kind of like a heat wave up here. There's Laura, one of ours, and our friend. Good evening. Laura. You're looking better, boss. Thanks very much, Laura. Hi, Debbie. Great to meet you, Matthew. No, I was in the 26, 28 degrees.
Wow, that's really good going.
We had to come indoors sometimes because it was too warm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I made the mistake of wearing a vest top, but didn't I? I looked like one of these sweeties, you know, red and white. I look like a barber's pole. Mind old barber's pole. I look like one of them. There's hi Mum, hi Matt Beans. Was Beans not in the last time calling you Mum?
No, I don't think me, Mum. Why am I called Mum?
No, you're called Mum for some reason.
Awesome. I like that.
So, Matthew, this is your first time meeting you, young man. How are you?
What did you say? Sorry, Scott? It broke up there a bit.
I thought it's because I was speaking. I forgot to warn you before we came on. Because I'm from Glasgow, I tend to speak quite fast at times. It took Debbie a while to get used to it. It's Charlie. Debbie, it's Charlie.
Oh, Charlie, my son, Charlie. Oh, hello, Charlie. Sorry, I didn't realise because you don't look like that.
It's your son. You gave birth to him.
Hi, Charlie.
Well, it's good to have you, young man. And you, Debbie. So, by the way, that's your son, Debbie. You know, you're for it after this, aren't you? When he sees you.
How am I meant to know his YouTube name is Beans?
Well, now you know, for future, write it down somewhere.
I will do. I'll do my best to remember it. Oh, well, I'm very glad you're joining us, Charlie.
Welcome, Charlie, and my sympathies for having Debbie as a mum. If she doesn't remember you, I'm very sorry. Anyway, so the last time Debbie was on, she was on with Pulse. She was gearing up for her first ever paranormal investigation. She was buying her bits and pieces in. And so tonight we are going to find out what happened, you know, all about it, their experiences, and if it's changed their views on the paranormal. Matthew was there with her. That's why he's on tonight. He's not just some random guy I brought on, you know.
Yeah.
So, it was about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, your investigation?
Might even been longer than that. I think it's probably about 5 weeks now, is it? Because I think it's been about 5 or 6 weeks since I've been on here last, and it was just after that. So I think getting on for 5 weeks.
Because I think we were out the same night.
Yeah.
That was a quick 5 weeks. I thought it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
No, I think it's longer than that. I could be wrong. Yeah.
They were out investigating between 2 and 5 weeks ago, shall we say. You know. So how did it go, folks? Give me the details. Come on. Who's going to go first?
It was really fascinating. fascinating. Matthew, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm an evolutionary and biological psychologist. That's what I do in my day job. And I got a background in maths and physics. I'm very much on the scientific side of things. I like to often say that I'm a scientist with an interest in science. That's basically how I introduced myself. But I've always had an interest, if you like, in the paranormal. So I was asking Debbie, did she know of any haunted venues, as it were? And Debbie manifested one, as it were, in the guise of this disused airbase in the Yorkshire countryside. And basically, we had equipment that we got from the SPR, the Society for Psychical Research in London. We got some equipment. Then we decided to go and do this paranormal investigation, as it were. And some interesting things happened, Scott. Some things that would dare I say, make a hardened, a paracurious person, I call myself. I'm usually a skeptic, but I'm very much... I'm paracurious, then, if there's such a term. It's a neologism, that sounds. But anyway, if it's such a term. So I've seen things in this investigation that make me think twice and make me question my beliefs, as it were, including hearing certain things that were corroborated with other people, people who we had no contact with. So there was no crossover, as it were. There was also interesting auditory stimuli or sounds as well. There was interesting auditory phenomena as well, including a female voice screaming. We can deduce it wasn't a fox because it didn't have the right frequency, or it wasn't an owl either for the aforementioned purposes. So how do we explain that when there's no other females in the building, and me and this other fella, and I've caught it on video as well, we heard this female screaming, as it were, sort of wretched scream, as it were. That was interesting, as well as other interesting things, and seeing what appeared to be, how can I put it, a female who was walking on all fours, as it were, coming towards us. It was a very strange experience, and both me and our fellow paranormal investigator witnessed this event, as it were. She was just coming towards us.
Separately later. So that was something I wasn't aware, because we had separated off into two groups for a little while. So Matthew and our other colleague Alex had, witnessed that experience that I didn't know anything about it. And then later on, when we returned to that same location, I felt and saw this lady. And it made me jump a little bit. I'm normally not very jumpy, but it was a bit strange. And when I said that out loud to Alex, I was like, I can see this. Alex was like, that's what we witnessed earlier. So that was quite fascinating.
Especially since you didn't know anything about it, basically. There's Craig, and that's Laura's other half. Being sceptical is a good thing. Even after being investigated for PIs for 4 years, it's human nature to question things that go out within the norm of human acknowledgement. We've been doing this for 5 years. Obviously, we believe, it's something after we pass for here. What it is, we're not exactly sure. No, I don't think anybody is. But I would say I'm 80% believer and 20% skeptic. Mm-hmm. You and I, Debbie, we've spoken about this before. There are people out there who are 100% believer, and every little noise or whatever whistle, oh, that's paranormal, that's spirit, but it could be something, a bus going by, or, whatever. So it's good to have that wee kind of skeptical bit inside you, because it makes you look for the other possibilities that it might be.
Absolutely.
And it makes you, like for us, we were out on Saturday at Loudon, and I heard a branch breaking. Now, Loudon Kirk is the middle of the countryside, but you never ever see any wildlife within the Kirk. But I heard a branch breaking, and I did say it could be wildlife, but I definitely heard that branch breaking. But you go and have a look anyway. If it was wildlife, they'd be long gone by then anyway. A fox or whatever, they see somebody coming who wasn't, they're off. So yeah, you need to be skeptical about the whole shebang, basically.
And I think that's where we were very lucky, because there was 5 of us there, And I think all of us naturally go to the what else could this be first. So a lot of the times when we heard lots of bangs and sounds, a lot of the time we would attribute it to it's the sound of the building because it's made out of metal and it's contracting with the change in temperature. So I think all of us were quite logical and quite rational with it of what else could this be other than paranormal. So I think it's a nice balance. So then those bits that were unusual really stood out to us.
It's when Laura's saying you can never be 100%. If that was the case, what's the point in doing what we do? Oh, a fox is live. That. Don't know what that means. Sorry, Laura, I don't know what that means. Oh, a fox is live. That. No, you need to make that more clearly, though, I'm afraid. Sorry. So Matthew, what was, before you did the investigation, what was your kind of beliefs or views on the paranormal? I'd love that, she means.
Well, it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one, Scott, because in my day job, I'm very much a hardened deterministic scientist. Certainly, I publish in the mainstream. I research mainstream topics, and I try to explain everything with mathematics. So I'm very much that type of person who looks for the scientific explanation, as Debbie will attest to most things. I try to find a logical thing to this. And whilst I've always been para-curious due to some experiences that have occurred to me in the past, I've always thought maybe there's some unexplained physics that goes on, maybe there's some unexplained chemistry that perhaps we don't understand. And indeed, that is still the view, though I think if I were to put a probabilistic value on my skepticism versus belief, I'd probably say 70-30, 70 to the belief side, 30 to the skeptical side. Because ultimately in science, too many people argue that science pertains to proof, and it doesn't. You can't prove anything in this world, as it were. You can only falsify things. So for people to say that we can prove or can't prove that there's no ghosts or whatever, that's a load of rubbish. You can falsify at best, and everything that I saw that night within that hangar, I could not falsify it with scientific explanations, Scott. It was the truest sense of the term paranormal, in that it was unexplained phenomena that could not be reduced to the lowest common denominator, i.e. a scientific explanation.
So you used a word there, Matthew, unexplained. That's what we tag everything as, unexplained, because in the paranormal field, if you claim something is definitely paranormal, you're leaving yourself wide open for, all sorts, because there's always going to be people out there that want to attack you, through social media. If you say that's definitely paranormal, you're always going to get them coming in and attacking you. Whereas if you turn around and say, we can't explain it, then if somebody does decide to come back and say, well, you're talking rubbish, say, well, no, wait a minute, because we said it's unexplained. We never stated it's paranormal. No. So you can keep yourself right. I'll cover you 2 seconds, Debbie, after I put this comment up. I've not forgotten about you there. Don't worry. Oh, you're right there. Skeptics are an essential part of any team. Without them, everything will be identified as paranormal. Skeptics keep the team grounded on investigation. I'm always the first to go and try and debunk before any confirmation. So tell us about your experience, Debbie. Also, it was your first. I know you were buzzing for it. You were all excited for going and stuff.
So I think it was really interesting from lots of different perspectives. I think there was lots that we could improve in terms of the investigation. So one of the things we do differently next time is actually it was a very, very large site. And I think we needed to be more specific on what area we were going to cover before going there, because we tried to cover too much ground. And then when we were doing the initial walk around to decide where we were going, we actually ended up experiencing a lot, which maybe we weren't set up for or prepared for. So I think it gave us a lot of learning. The bits that stood out for me particularly was obviously was that lady, but there was also another incident where we were all witnessing a sort of male shadow down the far end of one room. And Alex, our colleague that's with us, has got mediumistic abilities, as have I to some extent. and he wasn't a very nice character. And what started to happen throughout the night is I started to get pushed. So it was quite aggressive, and I could hear him telling us to F off, basically. And when I was climbing up some stairs, I got pushed. When I was going down the stairs, I got pushed. And then when we were in the room later on, and there's 2 occasions where this happened, where we're in that facility, Matthew and Alex were asking for a sound to be made. If you are willing to communicate with us, give us a sound, make a sound. And every time that happened, I would get pushed. So I would feel myself moving. Now, you could say skeptically that's some sort of ideomotor response going on with me, that's my subconscious mind moving me. But it didn't feel like that. It felt like something was shoving me quite forcefully. So then Alex, our colleague, said, well, basically, if you're doing that to her, can you do it to me? And then we both started moving at the same time. So that was fascinating to be part of. Now, whether or not there's a scientific explanation for that, whether it's something paranormal, I don't know. But it was strange.
And the fact that, you felt yourself getting pushed, and then you said to whoever was there, the other day everyone says, push me, and then the 2 of you get pushed. It's you're always going to get skeptics, and they're always going to say black A, B, just equals C, Y, Z, or the usual. We've had it for, we've done this really fine. We've had it quite a few times. Skeptics coming in, but there's just sometimes. Oh, there's Kate. And yes, I was just saying to our guests there, we had a heat wave in Scotland about 2 weeks ago. It was up in the 26th, 28th, and I think I'm looking pretty colourful. A big strawberry. I'm usually white, Matthew. Debbie will tell you, I'm usually the colour of your wall behind you, pure white. So this is a really good tan for me. What was I saying? But for the fact that it happened to the both of you, this is what I try and say to people. Science, I'll be honest with you, we're no scientific people. We're a basic kind of team, because I believe spirit is basic. It's just another person that's there that's trying to communicate or get some kind of message across to you. And I try to say to people, there's things happen that you just cannot explain. 9 times out of 10, it's a personal experience that you might feel, but the rest of the group doesn't feel it. But yourself that something you've heard, something felt, whatever it might be, that you can try for years to explain it away, but at the end of the day, there's no way to explain it.
And that's the thing, it's so subjective, isn't it? Because you're relying a lot on the feelings and sensations you've got, the things you're seeing, the things you're hearing, the things you're feeling and sensing. And we're all different in the way that we receive information in our minds anyway. So different people are going to experience things in different ways. But I think that was what really stood out to me as well. There was different places where we would all of a sudden all feel like a tightening in our chest, or that it went particularly cold, or that we felt there was eyes on us. And yes, we felt it in slightly different extents. Like, I'm quite extreme. So at one point I felt like I felt really sick and I started retching. So I'm quite sensitive to things. Whereas, say, Alex was aware that it felt funny, but he didn't feel it to that extreme. So it's really interesting.
But compared to yesterday, you do. Thank you, dear. My son is a non-believer, but he hates getting his photo taken, because in every photo, 99% of photos taken of my son is a green, blue. I've seen photos of Laura's boy, and my wee cable in my mouse was stuck there. There is this kind of orb kind of thing. But you see, a lot of people say, I felt sick, I felt feet. And some, scientists and that might say, skeptics, whatever, might say, oh, well, did you have anything to eat that day? Was the room too warm? Whatever. Is your blood sugar level too low? Which is things you take into consideration, obviously. But
yeah,
I've had spirit affect me once. It was at Canongate Kirk in Edinburgh. This is about 4.5 years ago. Canongate Kirk is a kirkyard in the middle of Edinburgh. It's very much like Greyfriars.
Right.
It dates around about the same kind of time period as Greyfriars. We've been there numerous times, but we went one night and we walked in the gate and we just felt that we weren't wanted. It wasn't demonic or any of that rubbish, we just felt we weren't wanted there. So the girls did a quick look around and then back to the car. I went right around the courtyard and took photographs. Now, Dave will tell you, I'm quite a laid-back guy. It takes a lot to push my buttons. But when I came out the cut that day, I was absolutely furious. I was raging. Nothing had happened. I hadn't met anybody, there was nobody there. But I would see if somebody walked by, I think I would have hit them. I just couldn't explain it. And we were going up to Greyfriars after it, so we jumped in the car. The further I got away from Canning Gate, the feeling just disappeared.
That's really interesting.
So, I mean, if somebody can explain that to me from a scientific or a skeptic point of view, fair enough, we'll listen. But I was absolutely furious. As I say, nothing had changed. I never met anybody or nobody stole my sweeties or anything. But I was absolutely like, get me away from you. But you were saying about looking back at your investigation, was the things you could have done different. That's normal when you're investigating. We do this a long time, and we still do that. We'll do investigations, and then after it, we're like, we should have done that. Or we should have went to that. But, it's just, you sort of learn as you go along. There's no right or wrong way to do an investigation. You do whatever you feel. If you feel drawn to a certain part of a building, whatever, then go to that part of the building.
Yes. Yeah.
Some people might say, right, I'll go there later on. I feel drawn there, but I'll leave that till 10 o'clock and we'll go up the stairs first. But for all you know, that might be spirit trying to tell you, come and see us. And so if you go back to 10 o'clock, they might be gone.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
It might be as simple as that. If you're drawn to a certain bit, then just go to that bit. Nothing might happen, But you just never. That's the thing I love about investigating. You just never know.
Yeah. Like I say, it's exciting. So there was one point in the night that I found really boring, to be honest, because there was one stage where we'd seen earlier on in the evening, we'd seen some shadows over, because there was two corridors that ran parallel to each other, and we was over one end on a gantry, and we were looking over, and we saw a shadow that looked like a figure. So we decided later on in the evening, half of us would stand on one side of the corridor, the others would go the other side of the corridor, and nothing happened, and we were stood there for about 20 minutes, and there was nothing. It was really boring. I've got a short attention span at the best of times, so that was very tricky for me.
20 minutes. Now, try 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, I don't think I can do that. I think I have to do things where there's a lot going on, otherwise I get bored. That's
the thing about spirit. They'll talk to you when they're ready.
Yeah.
And you could be sitting there for 2 and 3 hours. To them, this is one question I've asked. Maybe you can help with this, Matthew. I don't know. I've asked this question to quite a few people, and nobody really knows. Does spirit have a concept? We spoke about this in our show, Debbie, didn't we? Concept of time. The same as we do. A few people says to me, no, they don't, and the rest of us says, no idea. It's something I've always wondered.
What do you think, Matthew?
Well, it depends upon what do we mean by time? Because we got evidence from both physics and indeed psychology. My PhD dealt with time perception, and ultimately time is very much a subjective concept. The only thing that's real is decay and age, if you like. But in this notion of time, it's very much a subjective thing. So if we confine ourselves to the opinion that time is subjective, but neither do other physical entities, i.e. ourselves, as well as non-physical entities, ghosts, for example, none of us have got a objective grasp of time. But if we confine ourselves to the opinion that time is an objective dimension, the fourth dimension, as Einstein would call it in his relativity, then I would presume that yes, they do have a concept of time because they exist within the same universe. There is only one universe, no matter how many dimensions and or layers it's got. So one could argue, if you believe that time is an objective construct, but yes, they would have the same concept of time. Whether they perceive that objective time differently is where the debate is at, Scott. So that would be my opinion on it.
I'd ask the question that if you go to, say, a certain building on a Saturday and investigate it and then leave, and Spirit sees you leaving, you go back the following Saturday and Spirit sees you coming in the door. Now, to us, that's a week. We're 7 days. But in Spirit's eyes, are they seeing us just walking out that door then coming straight back in? If that makes sense.
I'm like, ultimately, if I suppose to them, if we take the belief that they're conscious, which I got no reason to believe that they're not, I would argue, Scott, well, again, I've got no evidence of this. I would argue that they do perceive time the same as physical entities do, because ultimately, as said, if we believe that time is an objective construct, then there can't be different parallels of time because it's a single dimension, as it were. So I would argue that they do have that concept of time. If it's subjective, though, i.e. that time does not exist outside of the mind, then ultimately they would have a different, if you like, time frame of reference to us. So it's a tricky one. And how we can explain that, I'm going to give you one of the most academic answers I can give you. I have no idea. So.
No idea, though, isn't it? Because how can we possibly know unless we're a spirit experiencing it from that realm? How can we definitively know? We can't. But even if we were, how can we know? Because like different people have got different perceptions of time anyway. So sometimes I'm very accurate at knowing what time it is. Sometimes, like if I go to sleep at night and I know that I say want to be awake at 6:37, I will wake up at 6:37 without an alarm. But then there's other times time will feel like it's really slow and dragging because I'm bored. And other times where time feels like it's going really fast. So it depends on what I'm doing and how I'm feeling as to how I perceive time. So that's surely going to be the same. If they are ghosts and they've got their personalities and their own experience, they're going to experience it differently. So some will maybe have an accurate concept of time. Others have maybe not got a clue.
See, I can relate to that, Debbie. I'll stay a comment up in 2 seconds, folks. I can relate to that with you. So, sometimes just time flies by. We've been doing investigations and, someone says, right, what's the time? We say, well, it's 12:30. And maybe I started about 8 o'clock. And so it's 12:30. You see, it can't be 12:30. It's just, time's just vanished. Laura is saying, time is a human concept. We eat at certain times, sleep at certain times, work at certain times because society expects us to do these things at certain times. But with spirit, I believe it's not. I believe it's not to do. But with spirit, I believe it's not to do. Laura's got a new phone and she's still trying to get used to it. I'm grassy young, Laura, sorry.
Wouldn't it be more the concept of day and night and seasons? Because obviously that's how we would have, normal folk would have sort of probably looked at sort of what was going on before clocks were in everybody else's houses. I mean, and you'd look at the sort of sun and the way the sun was rising and setting and things. But I don't know, surely they don't have a concept of daytime and nighttime, or whether it's spring or summer or autumn or winter. I don't know.
You see, there's a Peter. Hi, Peter, young man. Thanks for coming in. With time, but as energy. You see, we'll come back to your investigation in a minute, folks. Trust me. I've always wondered this as well. Our spirits aware of, like when it's Christmas time. One of the biggest times of the year. Christmas dates, but way back, hundreds and hundreds of years. So no matter what kind of time frame the spirit's from, they would have known Christmas at one point or another.
I suppose it depends on what they're observing as well, because I know, like, if I've ever had a couple of weeks off work, which never happens nowadays, if you've not got anything planned in your diary, the days can all merge into one and you can quite soon quickly lose track of what number day you're on your holiday or what's going on. So I suppose if you didn't have anybody external telling you it's Christmas, why would you know? But then if they're observing what's going on around them and everyone's putting up a Christmas tree, as long as they understand the concept of Christmas, then surely they'll know what's going on.
That's a good point. Peter's saying, I wonder if because we as humans are in the 3D and therefore space being the most prevalent thing, we would experience time very differently to spirit who seeing as they exist as energy.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you, Matthew. Probably this interdimension where time is the most prevalent thing. We did an investigation some time ago, and we got a clear sentence asking us if we are used ghosts. It was on Laura's voice recorder on her phone. It was a clear, very close, are used ghosts. Now, we'd never been asked that before. And so I was talking about it on a show one night, and one of the girls who came into the chat suggested that could be investigators from the future investigating us. And that's when I get totally lost.
Well, we certainly know that there's a mechanism in physics that allows for time traveling in the past, as it were. Every time you look up at the stars, for example, VY Canis Majoris, that star hasn't existed for millions of years, but due to the speed of light, we're only seeing it now, though it was destroyed millions of years ago. So we know that traveling back in time is a theoretical possibility. However, traveling into the future, that would imply that the future already exists, which goes against all common notions of what we understand about, say, causation and effect. For example, Scott, if you press the plunger, you'd expect an explosion to happen. If time travel to the future were possible, it would break one of the fundamental laws of general relativity, i.e. causality, meaning that the explosion could happen before the plunger is pressed. You know that weird intuition, if you like, but that's where I suppose quantum mechanics comes in. It can explain weird things like that. But whether there is a future that they could travel to, it's so many paradoxes one would have to solve for that. But I suppose there's a possibility, and I'm not going to confide myself. I'm not going to pigeonhole myself to a belief one way or the other. Though certainly there is no mechanism that I know of in physics that allows for traveling into the future. If there were any mechanism, it would break general relativity. If we break the rules of general relativity, that basically means we understand absolutely nothing about the universe.
Well, then that makes sense. Why would we understand a lot about the universe? Because we're so infantile in our discoveries. Why would we know a lot?
I'm thinking in terms of the Friedman equations. That constant T, which stands for time. If that were broken, that would mean everything that we think we understand is not real. It's not real.
Really exciting.
And also, how would we know if anyone did come from the future? What could they tell us? Because obviously we're not there, and presumably it does not exist yet. So how could we ever verify this?
Yeah, because time's going to be constantly in flux, isn't it? Because all future probabilities are going to be based on the choices we make in the present. So it could constantly be changing. So does a future ever exist?
Yeah, but could you honestly argue that the explosion comes before the plunge is pressed?
Maybe.
That's that. No, because no. Unless you're going to get into some weird quantum mechanics, some sort of weirdness. But then, although I suppose the Bell theorem does allow for that ultimately.
Pearson, what if past and future only exist in the human mind and in the energetic world that we experience with our senses? There is only now. I would go with that.
Ultimately, you could argue that time is just a subjective concept. It's certainly time was basically created as a concept by the Sumerian culture, who predated the Babylonians. They created this concept of time via astronomical. What's the word I'm looking for? Astronomical movements. Sirius, the dog star. That's the metric they use for time. So Peter is right to suggest that time maybe is just all in the mind. It's just a subjective concept, which then leads back to the to the possibility that the spirits would experience time differently, because ultimately there is no objective marker for time. It's just a man-made concept, and indeed they did. And Newton very much didn't have the tools with the fourth dimension. Hence, we had tensor calculus of Einstein, where that allowed for those higher dimensions, as it were. I'm not going to get into that though, because I'll bore you all to death with the mathematics behind your relativity.
And you totally lose me. You know, so
loses me. But what's great, Scott, is I constantly confuse Matthew. I'm constantly challenging his view and reality, and I think this is why we've become a strange sort of friendship between Matthew and I, because lots of weird paranormal things happen around me, and particularly when Matthew and I get together, and Matthew can't explain it, and it's so funny. It's really hilarious to watch him sort of being completely baffled by it.
See, I like that as well. Laura's saying, well, as paranormal investigations, we were once asked if we were ghosts, which lead us to believe that we were being investigated from someone from the future, not the past. You really wouldn't, Matthew. I'm the clever one in PIH. You really wouldn't. Really wouldn't what? I think this is the third time Laura's lost me tonight. You really wouldn't. He says, can you clarify that comment, please, Laura? That's me being posh. Clarify the comment. That's as posh as you get from me. All right, you'll no lose Laura. Laura's quite brainy, whereas we're kind of thick. You know, no Debbie, me. You know, no saying Debbie's thick.
Nobody is thick. Intelligence and education are literally a human-made concept. So, yeah, nobody's thick.
Concentrate, Gav. I'm trying to concentrate there. Thanks very much for the advice there. What was I saying? Aye, that what you were saying, Debbie, that you tell Matthew things that have happened and it totally bewilders him. You know, because he can't explain. I see that's the side I like as well. When, as I said earlier on, when something happens and you tell somebody about it and say, explain that to me if you can, and say, well, I can't. And it can be the smallest thing, you know.
But that's what I like about this as well, because it's not only am I telling him about it, he's experiencing it. So he's getting first-hand unusual experiences, which is really funny. It's
I totally agree. To me, you know, people who might doubt it or whatever you want, skeptic, whatever you would call it, I say to them, well, go along and do an investigation, you know, or go with a team. Don't go to an event. No disrespect to people that hold events. Go out with an actual team, you know, because events, you don't really get to experience a lot of events because they're organised and the people who are running them are going to concentrate on, you know, to be A at a certain time and B at a certain time. So you're not really getting just to do your own thing. And so that's why I say, you know, just go and just experience it for yourself.
Absolutely.
And if something happens to you that you can't explain, then start to question it. It's the same, you know, the time that I'm going to get myself lost here, I know, but Debbie, can I send you a video that I can't explain? Please feel free to send it to Matthew. It's my passed on dog and cat interacting with me.
Yes, please. I would love to see that. Please do send it on. And I don't know if you've got my details, but if not, we'll find a way to get them to you after the show.
I know we'll get it passed over to you. One way or the other. So, I mean, the whole concept of time, and I know I'm going to regret bringing this up, you know, but however, what about residual hauntings? I'm going to come back to investigation because I know a couple of questions I asked about investigation. What about residual hauntings?
What about them, Scott. What specifically are you thinking of?
Right. Well, for instance, so I think examples. There's the farm that we go to. You always feel like there's people walking about doing their own thing, and they're totally unaware of us. We in fact, another prime example is we investigated a railway station a couple of years ago,
Right.
and the whole station, people used to live there, but in the basement where people used to live is now a bakery, and the two girls in the bakery, they started at 5 a.m, and they'd always reported that they always heard people walking about, doors getting closed when there was nobody else there. So we did an investigation, and we came to the conclusion that when the people lived there, about 4 or 5 in the morning would have been the time they were getting up to get ready for their day. And so this is what the girls were hearing, was people getting up and getting organised to go to work or whatever they were doing. So that's kind of a residual haunting. The spirits are still doing their own thing in their time.
Yeah.
It's the same as the Roman soldiers that have been reported. Chester's a big one for it. Many people have reported hearing and seeing Roman soldiers walking along what used to be the Roman road in Chester. They always report them that you can see them for the knee up, simply because the road at that time would have been lowered down.
It's interesting. Is it recorded like obviously a stone tape theory where it's just a snapshot of time that's playing out over and over again? Is it that there's some sort of portal there that is allowing us a glimpse into a different time zone? What is happening with that? I mean, we don't know, but it's fascinating, isn't it? And I do think there is a difference, though, between sort of residual energy that doesn't interact with you and something that's there that does interact in some way that will either converse with you or make sounds or change sensations or something. So they've got to be different phenomena in some capacity, but I don't really know how.
Well, what do you think, Matthew?
Well, you ask me as a good old-fashioned materialist, I would argue that everything in the universe, including spirits, are basically electrons. Electrons ultimately give rise to charge, electrical charge, energy, if you like, i.e. Maxwell's 4 equations of electromagnetism. So if you ask me, if we believe in the conservation of energy, and we've got no reason not to disbelieve it, given that we know that energy can't be created or destroyed, that means that when the human body ultimately returns to the prior state of ashes to ashes, dust to dust, consciousness, which I don't really believe in consciousness, I'll be honest with you. I just believe it's a process of mind. That's a bit of a contradiction. It's just electrons. It's basically weird interactions with electrons. So basically, what I would argue, that's just the slow cancer of my pipe, Pete. I would argue that yes, it is possible you can have residual hauntings, because ultimately those spirits, they are basically subjected to the same rules of electromagnetism. You can't destroy electric charge. You can't destroy an electron. You can try, but you destroy the universe if you did that, because you disbalance the equilibrium. So yeah, there's absolutely no reason why these spirits can't exist as residual energy, because ultimately you can't destroy energy. You can simply transform it to different parts, if you like. You can even transform it into different states. You can't destroy it.
Peter's saying, can anybody see the mysterious mist that keeps appearing around Matthew's head?
It's the pipe.
Just the pipe.
Yeah, the slow decay of my demise. So, yeah.
But I think this is why we tend to stick to the basics, because we believe, it's contact with spirit is simply, can be one-on-one or one. We've had investigations where we've had, numerous spirits at the same time, round about us, talking amongst ourselves. We've got quite a few EVPs of it, talking amongst ourselves, and then you get we call it intelligent hauntings. intelligent spirits that where you ask a question and you get an intelligent answer back from them. So on your investigation, I mean, no doubt before you've done it, you've watched ghost shows, whatever, ghost adventures.
Young. Like, I used to watch Most Haunted probably in my late teens or early 20s, but I haven't watched anything since then, so I can't really remember. I remember often getting a bit bored by Most Haunted because it was just slow paced, and I was like, oh, there's not really a lot happening here. And there was too many adverts, so I don't think my attention.
Oh, I hate adverts. I hate adverts.
So see
when you're watching a good TV program and bang, up comes about 25 adverts, or on the telly, Paramount and stuff like that, iPlayer, it tells you how many adverts there is, 1 or 6. Do you think I could go and cut the grass, just now where the adverts are on. Might as well go and paint that room because there's 27 adverts coming up, and there's one after. And half of them are sure. I remember the adverts of old. This is non-paranormal, but this is how our show goes sometimes, Mark. But the old adverts, the interesting ones that told a story. Do you remember the adverts? The good ones that you grew up with, like Jacob's Club biscuits and stuff like that, Everybody remembered the good adverts. But now you've got all sorts of trash on it, and it's just, I'm blabbering. It's just when you talk about adverts.
A lot of adverts. I do know I never slept as a baby, though, and the only way my parents could get me to be quiet was to have a video playing constantly all night of adverts on a continuous loop as a baby. I don't know why I liked them then. I've had no interest ever since.
The big VHS advert, the big VHS videos with that. There you go.
A whole lot of adverts, and they would just play it to get me to be quiet for a little while.
There's one advert I always remember from my childhood, and I've tried to find it on YouTube and stuff like that, but I cannot find it. And I think it's set in France or somewhere like that, but it's a guy, and he's in his wee shed, and he's having a shave, and there's this cat comes along, a guy with a horse and cat, and the wheels making a squeaking sound. And so the guy chases this cat down the road with his oil can and starts oiling all the wheels in the car. I can't remember what it was for, but it's, one of these stupid adverts that stick in your head.
Yes.
I'm just talking nonsense now, really, aren't I? So I mean, you've watched ghost shows at some point or another, and you've seen what happens, all the action. How do you compare them now to you being doing the real thing?
I thought the real thing was more exciting. It was a bit more interesting. What do you think, Matthew?
The problem with these ghost shows is that they got people like me advising on them who know how to scare people. Every one of them has got a psychologist on the production team. So certainly things like Most Haunted, Kieran O'Keefe, for example. If you met him, he's an interesting lad, Kieran. Interesting lad.
I haven't met him yet.
Yeah, an interesting lad, Kieran O'Keefe. He's forensic psychologist by training, bizarrely, but whatever. That's a tangent. Anyway, a lot of these ghost shows, a lot of them partake in, say, if you like, scare value. What's the one in America? Several in America. That's a bit of an
Ghost Adventures.
That's exactly the one I was thinking of, Scott, with Zach Baggins, or whatever his name is.
The Demons.
Yeah, things like that. They very much, you get a sense that they are fixed, that they staged. And I think of a lot of the phenomena in those things are staged. But certainly the stuff that I saw on our ghost investigation, it wasn't staged. It couldn't have been, because, how would people know what one would be afraid of or what one would react to? So certainly I think the real thing, dare I say, I hasten to add, is more authentic. And because we didn't have the, how can I put this nicely, the most high quality of kit, I think that did make it more authentic, as it were. Mm-hmm. Those SLR cameras, I don't put much faith in those things, because ultimately it's just an algorithm, and they're going to pick up things in the environment because dust particles all around us, as it were. But when you actually see these things with your own eyes, and when you experience them, it's all about the human experience. That's the magic there. So I would agree with Debbie, but ultimately they were far more exciting when you see these things. It's going to be a completely idiotic thing to say, in the flesh, as it were. It's more exciting to actually see them, as opposed to see actors, if you like, and producers physically manifesting this stuff for aesthetic purposes on television. So
you're totally right. It's a kind of, I hate to use the word, but it's a kind of buzz you get when you see something, and a shadow. I've seen only one thing in my time. It was loud and cut, and it was like a millisecond, but I'm kind of 50-50, where I saw it was a little girl peeking out from behind bushes kind of thing. But I don't know whether it's just because, we were there, and, your mind can start turning, or did I actually see her? She was there and gone in a flash, basically. But it is when you hear that thing or you see that thing and there's nothing around, take a sound, for instance, there's nothing in that area that could make that sound. That the sound doesn't fit with your surroundings. I've heard many a voice.
You haven't.
You what?
I said, no, you haven't.
Sarah's just there. She's actually late. She's usually Sarah pipes in early, but she's actually a bit late piping in.
I was busy.
Eh?
I was busy.
She was watching Charmed. Have you ever watched Charmed?
No, I haven't.
I used to watch it as a child.
It's an acquired taste. I would definitely say for
No,
Charmed.
I was getting a drumming lesson, actually.
Right. Okay. That's me told anyway. So it's when you get that capture, for want of a better word, that you get the buzz, and you know that there's no way that you can explain it. Your subjective first-hand experience has to feel more authentic and real than any experience you only get from watching a show made in the past by others and then broadcast at a later date. Exactly. You can watch 200 ghost shows, but you'll never get near the kind of feeling you get, atmosphere, when you're actually out there doing it,
Well, I think that's the same with anything, isn't it? It's like, it's nice to listen to music on YouTube or through your speakers at home, but it's very different experience to being live with a band. You feel it, you have a sensory experience, you're surrounded by it, and I think it's the same with paranormal investigation.
I think the last time I seen a band, long time ago. I've not been a concert in In fact, the last concert I went to was it was Elvis live at the exhibition centre. Obviously, it wasn't Elvis, but it was Elvis's band that played them in the 70s. It was an interactive video thing. I've seen that 5 times. Amazing. It was absolutely amazing how they put it together. But what you were saying about equipment, Matthew, I totally agree with you. We use the basic. We don't go in for all the big fancy equipment. We use, a K2, a REM pod, cat balls, these kind of things, ping pong balls, simple things. Because the cost of the equipment these days is just through the roof. It's a joke. And you get these teams that go and they're equipped up to here. They've got everything. And Spirit doesn't care if you've got a £300 camera or a 30p ping pong ball. That's just my way of thinking. Spirit just wants to talk to you if they're in the right mood to do so.
Yeah, and the more complex the kit too, you're bound to get something, a false positive, because ultimately you're feeding in more variables into this equipment. So you're going to inevitably pick up something with the more complex equipment. It's the basic equipment, I suppose, is the best. But because we live in an era where objectivity is demanded, so somewhat, incorrectly, if you ask me, because there's no such thing as pure objectivity ultimately. You know, how can you ever prove to these people, how can you ever demonstrate to these people that such phenomena exists, when ultimately they can always use the argument, the equipment, there's too many factors in this. So by actually succumbing to their objective needs, you're actually sort of almost falsifying yourself in a way, because then they can turn around and argue, we've got this complex equipment that can pick up so many different variables in the environment. Of course you're going to pick up something. And then you interpret it as paranormal, as it were. So I would agree that the basic equipment is the best, because there's less variables to it to interfere with the phenomena in the first place. Basic is the way to go. Good old-fashioned pen and paper, as it were, Scott. And never mind all of this cacophony of fancy technology.
No, we don't. I mean, no offense to everybody use it. We don't need it. I mean, we use a K2. You know, I think that's one of the most common things that everybody uses. I think you guys used it as well. And granted, the K2, there's many things can interfere with it, you know. But the way I like to work it is, if you get your K2, I think I've said this to Debbie before, if you get your K2 and it's sitting dormant, you know, as I call it, it's just got the one green light on for a period of time, and then you ask a question, you know, can you make that go to yellow if you're a male? And the light goes, maybe not straight away, but the light goes to yellow and then back down. And then it sits dormant again until you ask another question. And then that moves again. And it only moves after you've asked a question. To me, I wouldn't say it's 100% proof, but to me, that's not an outside, you know, influence making that work. That's somebody nearby. You know, I mean, I know radio waves, taxi waves, wires and ceilings, walls that can set them off, your phone can set it off. You know, the list is endless. But if the K2 works the way I just said, then to me, that's proof. I'm just using that word, a better word, that there is someone beside you. Someone is making that move.
I think that makes sense. I think, like you say, if it happens once, it's sort of a bit of a coincidence, isn't it? But if it keeps happening, then there's a pattern. There's something there that is interesting to sort of explore further.
It's like Saturday night there, we were at Loudon-Kirk, and I put a K2 on the wall, and we were live. So I was nearby with my phone, and it kept just flickering. So I moved back a wee bit, and it stopped flickering. But then it started flickering again, and I hadn't moved.
Interesting.
So,
I think, Matthew, we need to go down to up to Scotland at some point and go and meet Scott and everybody, and go and do a joint investigation. Our team and their team. What do you think?
I've never been to Scotland, so
never.
Let's go on a road trip. Are you saying not to a road trip, or no, you've not been to Scotland?
I know the route. It's just straight up to the M6, and then you get into Glasgow. So I know the route.
It's interesting you said go down to Scotland there, Debbie. We had Rosie, Kat and Emma and Mum up at the weekend there for Southampton. And they came up Friday and left on Sunday. They were at Loudon with the weekend. But Rosie said the same thing. Oh, I love coming down to Scotland. I know.
Well, I suppose it depends on where you are in space, doesn't it, as to which way round is actually correct? Because we draw something on a map doesn't mean that's actually the way it is.
It doesn't real, because if you think about it, you've got the UK, right? You've got Scotland, England, Wales, right? Where's Scotland? It's at the top, which is north. I might be wrong, you know. Scotland's at the top, which is north. Am I right? Am I wrong?
I don't know. I'm quite interesting with this, because Matthew laughs at me quite a lot, because I have got no awareness of where I am in space. I'm here now, and this is where I exist, and this is my reality. So where I am in relation to anything else geographically, I'm fairly clueless.
If we ever go for a drive, Debbie, I'm not letting you drive.
That's probably very wise.
You end up in Quinbran or Cornwall, Minehead or something, and you think you're heading for Glasgow.
But it's an adventure. You never know where we
Oh,
are.
it's certainly be an adventure, 3 weeks on the road looking for Glasgow. But so, I mean, Scotland is in the north, England's in the south. That's why we always say we're going down south.
Well, I think we should go up at some point, Matthew, and do a joint investigation. Are you both up for that?
Yeah.
Aye, we're not going anywhere.
Yay! Road trip.
Whereabouts are yous?
I'm in Lincolnshire.
So that's kind of east side, isn't it?
Yes.
Southeast.
So for Lincolnshire, because I've been to Skegness a few times.
Yeah, we're an hour away from Skegness.
So you're about 5 hours for Glasgow.
Yeah.
You go up the A1, up the M1, A1, cut over at Scotch Corner, and then onto the M6.
I remember that from when I went to Scotland recently. I went on a road trip to Scotland with my daughter in the Easter holidays.
Well, don't get near Edinburgh because you'll end up totally lost.
We went to somewhere called Blairgowrie, I think it was, and it was so good. I came back with a really fancy chair.
A chair?
Yeah, I got carried away. There were some fantastic shops there. I don't normally buy anything, but there was this beautiful painting and I really wanted it. And I decided to buy it, and then it sent me a bit crazy on a shopping spree. So I spent time in all of these like second-hand and antique shops. And at the end, I saw the chair, and it's wooden and it's made out of antlers. I think they're sort of deer antlers, maybe. And I thought, I can't take a chair back home with me. So I walked away from it. I was having my lunch, and I just thought, I'm never going to see a chair like that again. So I decided to buy the chair, and we had to move all the stuff out of the boot, and we managed to get it into the car. It's really heavy, isn't it, Matthew? You've seen my special chair. And then we were trying to work out how to sneak it into the house without anybody knowing, but we realised that wasn't possible. So instead, I got Pete to carry it in the house for me.
When people come to Scotland, you know a lot of people in England, when they come out to visit Scotland, when people come out to visit Scotland and they go home, usually they'll take the likes of, fridge magnets, tea towels with, pipers on them or something, Highland cow, fluffy toys, things like that. I've never heard anybody taking a chair home.
It's really a special chair. I'm going to have to send you a photograph of it. But I decided I want a whole Scottish themed room in my house now. I might make the games room a Scottish themed room, possibly.
Well, the good thing is if you broke down on the way home, at least you've somewhere to sit.
I don't think I would, because it was too heavy for me to carry. It's the heaviest chair I've ever felt before.
This must be some kind of special chair, Matthew, bless her. I went to Scotland to buy a chair. Have you not got an IKEA or something nearby?
Yeah, but you couldn't get such a unique chair in IKEA.
Well, when you come out, I don't think there's any chair shops near us. So,
This wasn't a chair shop. It was a random shop selling all sorts of strange and unusual things.
One of my favourite shops up north, I'm a big fan of Christmas. This is totally paranormal, not paranormal related, but I love Christmas. And when I drove the trucks, I used to stop off at Pitlochry, which is about 11 miles north of Perth as you're going towards Inverness.
Okay.
It's a wee, I don't know if it comes, I think it's too big to be a village. I don't know if a village is a certain size. But it's not very well advertised, but it's always mobbed with tourists. But I found a Christmas, all year round Christmas shop.
Oh, interesting.
In Blairgowrie, and I was on my glory.
I
Not Blairgowrie. Apparently you're going to be saying Blairgowrie.
Oh.
It was an all-round Christmas, and it was always busy. Every time I used to go up once a week and park up there because I drove the trucks. And it was always mobbed this, middle of July, maybe.
How strange.
12-degree heat wave in Scotland, people are in buying Christmas stuff.
Yeah.
But no, you definitely need to come up, because I would love you to come up and do Loudon Kirk, etc. And I think you would find that quite fascinating. So, yeah, I'm watching the titles. So after your first investigation, has it changed your views on the paranormal as to what they were prior to the investigation?
I think for me, no, because I already believe in things and I've already had lots and lots of experiences. So I think for me, it's just further confirmation that there are some unusual and interesting things going on that may be paranormal. I don't know about you, Matthew. What do you think?
It's made me more open-minded in my belief system, certainly. There are some things out there that you cannot explain, or whether that is just some sort of physics that we are yet to understand, or whether, which in itself could be paranormal, as it were. Like if we don't understand something, I guess ultimately it is paranormal, as it were, 'cause it's unexplainable by current theories of nature. So I think it's made me more open-minded to the possibility that there is something out there that can't be explained. What the something is and what the out there is, mind you, are questions that are for debates for the philosophers, dare I say. So
Here's a question, right? I've got my own answer to this, just my head. What if someone was to come up and ask you, both of you, what is a soul? What's your soul? You know, somebody who's never ever looked into the paranormal or anything like that, you know. If somebody came up, you know, I keep hearing this word soul. What's your soul? How would you answer that? Whoever wants to go first, I'll go first.
I think your soul is your essence. So I think it's probably linked to consciousness, but I'm not sure if they're one of the same thing or if they're two different aspects of something. So when I'm doing the past life work with individuals, we will often go to the life in between lives. So once they've gone through their death, we go back to where they're pure soul or pure energy. And at that point, they are no longer physical matter and they're an awareness. So they can interact with other souls and that's more who you really are. So like this physical body is just a vehicle that your soul resides in. So when the vehicle gets old and worn out, you leave it and you get a new one. So I think our souls are who we really are. But we, in order to have a human experience, in order to sort of learn and understand, we have to maybe be in a physical body. I don't know.
Would you think, Matthew?
Well, if you were to ask me as a materialist, I would simply say that soul is just a term that we have attributed to strange electron interaction. If you were to ask me as a dualist, that I believe in both mind and brain, I would argue that consciousness perhaps is some unknown dimension of the universe. That's what I would say. And if consciousness, if we take the original definition of soul from Descartes, even going all the way back to the likes of Aristotle and Pythagoras, if we take the definition of soul and consciousness meaning the same thing, then ultimately I would argue that both soul and consciousness, again, depending on philosophical position, are one in the same thing. So I would say it's your consciousness.
So are we all just aspects of energy or aspects of the universe exploring itself?
If you were to ask Carl Jung, with respect to his collective unconscious, he would argue that we're all connected with this, what he termed as the collective unconscious. It's basically something that we're all connected by. Whether that is energy, well, it has to be energy, I guess, if it exists at all. It has to be energy. So yeah, we're all part of the same energy, or we're all just a bundle of atoms studying atoms.
But then if we're all, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because if we're all part of like the same energy, why do we like feel drawn to some people and yet we don't like other people sort of at that soul level? I mean, there's obviously the human behavior, the interactions with people, but you know, sometimes you just meet somebody and you feel like you've got a soul connection with them, like you've known them throughout time and space and they just click. But then you can come across loads of other people and you just walk past them like they're just another person. How does that work?
You could argue from an evolutionary psychological point of view that it's the major histocompatibility complex in that humans are more attracted to people who are genetically different to them. So you could argue that from a genetics point of view.
I don't buy that. It's too simplistic.
I know what Debbie's got. I've met, obviously, again, I'm Glaswegian. We go on with, we could talk to hedges and stuff. We could make friends with a tree. Do you know what I mean? But I've met some people in life, and I'll stay a comment on 2 seconds, folks. I've met the odd person in life, and never met them before, never spoke to them, but you just meet them and you instantly don't like them. And you can't explain why. It's nothing evil or mal. You don't wish them, D-E-D-A-D, you know what I mean? But you just take an instant dislike. You tell people about it and say, why do you not like him? I say, I don't know. I've never met the guy. He's never done anything to me. I just don't like him.
Interesting. And I don't know, I'm sort of thinking now, and I don't know if this is going on another tangent. So how Matthew and I became friends was we had a conversation at university, and he was basically saying he had some paranormal experiences in his property. And me being me, I was like, can I have a look? But not going to his place physically, but getting myself in a relaxed state and tuning in energetically. And when I did that at a distance, so not knowing Matthew, not only could I describe certain aspects of his house, I also picked up on some very, very personal things about him that nobody else knew and I had no way of knowing. And how does that work then if we're putting it down to like just the scientific theories you've just explained, Matthew? How can that happen?
Genetics are weird.
I'll stay these comments up there. I've got a question for you, Debbie, about the past. I'll ask you as well, Matthew. I'm not going to exclude you. Your soul's your personality, your love essence of what makes you you. I'm going to come back to that comment because part of the question I'm going to ask you, Debbie. Okay. Laura wants you to come back on, Matthew. No mention of you, Debbie. Sorry.
That's fine. We're used to me now. Matthew's the novelty.
Everything is energy. Me and Sarah, there's 18 years between us. Laura and Sarah just kind of click. Maybe it's like the North Pole and South Pole, or my attracting people and repelling depending on the pole they are facing. Is it all frequency? Tuning into the source frequency like a radio or TV station. It is weird, but how you just meet somebody and you just don't like them, or you do click immediately, and you just start talking, and you can talk for hours, and it's the first time you've met them. But I'm just jump back to what we were saying about the soul. My belief is what Laura says, as you say as well. Your soul is your personality. It what makes you a good person or a bad person, happy person or unhappy, And so when we leave this body, as you say, Debbie, once this body's done, we bugger off, we go elsewhere. So my question is, those comments made more sense at the time I wrote them. I know I'm a wee bit behind, buddy. I do apologise. So if the soul is the way I imagine it, just us, when the old reincarnation theory, in the past lives regression, if we are the same person, how can we not remember past lives? So,
from what my understanding is, yes, what my understanding is when I've worked with clients, I've worked with a lot of clients with this, is that sort of at a soul level, it's like we've got all the knowledge in the universe, like we've read every single book, but we've not had any personal experiential learning of it. So in order to properly understand it, rather than just having the knowledge, we need the experience. So in order to have those experiences, we need to have interactions with others and to have sort of scenarios created, almost like a play. So you have to forget some of it so that you can have those experiences in an authentic way, to feel those genuine emotions, to understand those interactions and to get the learning and growth from them. And also, it's, from my understanding, it's almost like being at school. So you come down here, you have a lesson, up and down again, wherever we are, and you experience life. And either you learn those lessons and tick, you get to move on to the next lesson, or you mess up and you have to come back and repeat the lesson until you get the hang of it. So I think we have to forget sometimes in order to grasp the learning. So we'll remember it at a soul level, But in our like human selves, if we remembered it, it would alter the course of our actions and interactions with people. And then that would stop us having the learning, I think.
You think? I like that wee look at the end, the doubtful look. You know,
Well,
I think.
I don't know. I'm never going to know. None of us can possibly know, can we? And that's what's fascinating about this.
It's just something I've wondered a couple of times. You know, if spirit moves on. I mean, we've encountered many spirits that are just the same as they were in life. You know, a joker, a ladies' man, a women's woman, whatever you want. They're the same person. So, well, if they're the same person and they come back time and again, how do they not remember anything for before? And here's another question: Who makes a decision of when you come back and what you do?
So, from once again experience with clients, what we do is in the in-between life state is we first tend to meet a guide, and that guide will help you sort of review the lifetime you've experienced. What lessons did you learn? How has it impacted your present lifetime? Was there anybody in that life that you've also encountered in this lifetime, and why is that? We then go on to a council of elders. So this council of elders are more like higher beings that oversee all of your lifetimes. And so you go and have a chat with them, basically, find out like how you're doing, and then you come up with a plan. So sometimes the elders say, right, you're going to have to go and learn this lesson. And in order to do that, you're going to have to be a male, and you're going to have to be born in like 16th century India or whatever, because that's where you're going to get the most relevant learning. Whereas at other times, it's more of a collaboration where you say, do you know what? This is the lesson I would like to learn next. And you get some choice. Is how it appears to be from all those interactions that clients experience when we're going through this process. But once again, whether that's real or not, I don't know.
Just for you, Susan, you need to go to 16th century. And we always think a reincarnation is somebody who's, lived before in the past. But is it possible for somebody to be reincarnated who's lived in the future?
Absolutely, because time isn't linear. So when you're out of that, so I suppose this goes back to these questions I asked earlier, at a soul level, you've got awareness of all time and space. So you'll slot yourself in where you need to go. So I've had people where their last past life that they had before this one was back in, say, like 200 BC in China. And the one before that was actually 20 years before this one. And then I've had some people that are in the future because you plonked into that sort of timeline. The timeline's a man-made construct. Whereas in soul or spirit, it's not.
So basically, you can it's possible for you to jump back and forward, wherever the powers that be decide that you're going.
Yes, because actually I'm going to have a very different experience, aren't I, now as a female living in England in the year 2025 as to what I would sort of being a female perhaps living 2,000 years ago in a different part of the world. So you're going to have different experiences depending on where you're born and the time that you're born in.
That's true. What about you, Matthew? What's your thoughts on it?
There is some evidence of cellular memory. A researcher by the name of Stevenson in 1958 did a study where this is quite a grim study. So I forgive me in advance if some of you get creeped out by it. He basically trained some mice up. Then he put them in a blender, and then he gave those mice, he fed them to their fellow brethren. And then those mice learned quicker than baseline mice who weren't fed the cannibalized remains of their brethren. So there is arguments, and certainly this goes with organ donations as well. But you can take on the memories of the previous organ, and there's some weird evidence there. There's some weird evidence. So there could be that memories are passed on from generation to generation, i.e. cellular memory. But a lot of that research dried up in the 1960s. It reached its zenith then. So again, whether it's possible.
I think epigenetics is a thing, and I think we're going to find out more and more of that, but then that doesn't account for sort of future experiences that people have. And I think there's a whole interplay here. So I think if you look at shamanism, which has taken place in all cultures around the world, a shaman will look at doing soul retrieval sometimes, so collecting parts of the person's soul that have become fragmented or lost. They might do ancestral healing of looking down the ancestral line of what's being passed through the generations, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and healing it. They might also do sort of entity release by releasing external energies. So I think all of it could interplay, and I think we've all had this inherent knowledge, and because we've now in our society overly rationalized things, we're so much in our heads, we've lost that sort of awareness, and I think we're sort of trying to rediscover things that we've already known for a very long time.
I think also, just for a wind up, that, you know, your past life, that sometimes if you're reincarnated, sometimes, you know, bits and bobs of your past life can drop in.
Yeah.
You know, it's the old scenario, you know, you go to a town that you've never been before, but you know exactly where you're going without sat nav, you know.
Yeah.
Or you see a building and you say, right, well, that's up the stairs. And people say, how do you know that? I don't know, I've never been, but I just know that so-and-so's up the hill. And so it could be parts of your past life. Maybe you lived in that town, maybe you visited it frequently or whatever, and it just pops in.
Yeah, quite possibly.
That makes sense. I think it makes sense to me. So, that's it. But I'm going to wind up here saying, Laura said, I can't explain it. 18 years with Sarah. I'm not saying who's older. I won't say who is the older of the two either, Laura. That is a secret.
Laura's older.
I know that wasn't me. I never busted you in that one. Never had a bad argument. We just got on each other. In effect, it's like hierarchy moving up. It appears it's the whole show on its own. But we'll wind up. So Matthew, will you come back on for us? Because Laura likes you.
Yeah, whenever.
Piping all.
I work late hours sometimes on a Tuesday, but yeah, whatever. I like chatting. Yeah.
It doesn't need to be a Tuesday. I can arrange, you know, I forgot what I was going to say.
What happened there, Matthew?
I just saw a shadow. It's yeah.
Okay.
And last question, I'm going to ask you, after your investigation, when you were leaving or when you came home, did you feel like anything had followed you home? Did you feel any different? Some people say, oh, I feel like somebody's followed me home. And, you know, did you feel any different the next day?
I asked that nothing came with me, and I was absolutely fine. I don't know about you, Matthew, but I was okay.
I sometimes see weird things in my car, but I haven't had that for a while now. But no, nothing out of the ordinary.
So you never had a paranormal hangover, as they call it?
Not from this experience.
I didn't actually think it was a thing till it happened to us. You know, you just feel totally drained the next day. I know there's people that get affected after every investigation, but then I'm fine sometimes, and other times you just no energy. You just cannot be annoyed moving.
But this is where I would always say, from looking from the more sort of work that I do, the therapeutic and energetic work, is I think energetic hygiene is really important. So if I was going to somewhere like this, I would always ground myself, protect myself, cleanse my energy. Then I would always make sure I cut any energetic connections afterwards and re-grounded and protect myself so that nothing was allowed to follow me. And I don't think in general in society we're taught those practices that are actually very straightforward and simple to prevent those things from happening. So I would say anybody that's watching about going and doing paranormal investigations or interacting with spirit in any way, it's always really important to practice energetic hygiene, just in the same way as we go into a shower and wash dirt off us. We should also be doing that energetically so that we're not taking away anything with us, because we don't want spooky things following us or making us feel drained or rubbish.
I was going to ask you that just before we round it up. What advice, you being first timers, what advice as first timers would you give to anybody who maybe gone out for the first time, you know, that you've been out?
So I would say come up with a plan before you go. Have clear roles as to what everybody's doing, just so it prevents confusion. Ground yourself, protect yourself, close yourself down afterwards. So practicing those energetic hygiene principles. I think as well, keep logical and rational with it. Look at the alternative explanations that are not paranormal, and go and enjoy it, really. What about you, Matthew?
I would say that go in with these things with an open mind, have no pre-existing notions or pre-existing narratives, and also enjoy the experience as well. you have to enjoy what you're doing with these things. And also, as I said, I think key here is to have an open mind. Try not to have any biases as best you cannot. Enjoy it. Enjoy it.
Yeah. Laura says, I know I was say before I leave, thank you, and you can't follow me home, and you need to stay here. Never had an issue. We've not. I always just say up here, thanks very much, Spirit. See you next time. Remember, you need to stay here, and that's it. The advice, Debbie had a fantastic course on physics, self-defense, hygiene, energy hygiene on her Thinkific.
It's an online teaching platform, so I was getting a lot of clients and a lot of individuals that were practicing spiritual-based work or interacting with this sort of thing that were feeling drained. So I created a course for people where whether they're dabbling in spiritual things or just that they have like those people that drain them in their day-to-day life, human people like the annoying neighbor or the person they work with that's always a drain, different things that you can do physically, mentally, emotionally to detach yourself from those things to keep yourself high energy and feeling good. So yes, I did create a course on that is very reasonably priced. It gives lots and lots of different tools and techniques.
So how do you pronounce it?
So it's Thinkific. So if you just put Debbie Ison .thinkific in, you find it. My page comes up.
And I take it that's meant to be interesting. That's a great. I will see you both again soon. Been immensely interesting. And the biggest piece of advice I give to somebody going on an investigation is don't expect anything.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people, because if you go in and you're not expecting anything, you're not building yourself up for disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
And you might come away empty-handed, you might not, but we'll wind it up there. I'll keep a hold of you just after we come off. So, usual question, where can people find you, Debbie?
So you can find me if you just type in Debbie Ison on any search engine. I'm all over the place. So my website is www.tranquil-awakenings.co.uk. But I'm on social media. I'm on YouTube. I'm easy to get hold of.
She's everywhere. Where were you, Matthew, if anybody's wanting to chat further with yourself? I don't want you to use your address or anything like that,
Just Google Matthew Hopkins, University of Northampton, and everything will come up about me. So,
and he will be there. But we'll wind it up.
Or Google Scholar. I'm on there too.
Very interesting guy. Very interesting lady as well. I'm not leaving Deb out because she'll never talk to me again if I do. So, as I say, I'll keep a hold of you just after we come off. So, a big thanks to Debbie and Matthew. We'll be seeing them again because a lot more to discuss by the sounds of it. We're back tomorrow night with Project Paranormal to another new guest, Holly and Ashley. And then Thursday night, Tracy and I are rounding off Henry VIII's wives. We're talking about Catherine Howard and Kathleen Parr. Catherine Howard was one that executed Catherine Parr, outlived Henry. So it's the last two wives we're doing. And then we move on to behind the scenes in the Tudors.
Nice.
I'll try sound all serious and interesting there. Behind the scenes in the Tudors. Do they work? That's I try, So we'll wind up there. So thanks very much for all your comments and watching. And we'll see you tomorrow night, 9 o'clock. And you'll see these two lovely people again very soon, I hope. Maybe you'll see them up south in Scotland. You never know. Bye.